Here we go, the next issue, and it's a big issue. And I've spent a life studying this issue. The courts, in particular one court, the Supreme Court. And Thomas Jefferson, in a letter to Edward Livingston in 1825, summed it up for me. This member of the government was at first considered as the most harmless and helpless of all its origins. But it is proved that the power of declaring what the law is, by sapping and mining slyly and without alarm the foundations of the Constitution, can do what open force would dare not attempt. Jefferson to Edward Livingston, 1825. Men in Black. Men in Black, if you're really interested in what's going on in the court, understanding the Supreme Court, understanding how it got to where it is, to be so powerful, it's a step-by-step explanation. But I heard Rush play it, audio today, and I said, this can't be the case. We conservatives have to be very, very serious about the Supreme Court and the rule of law. We cannot become clownish and pander when it comes to one of the precious 9 positions on the Supreme Court. We must fight those who would take up a position on the court for the purpose of advancing their own radical agenda. We may be in a minority, but we must fight. At a minimum, we must use our heads when we speak. And so I want you to listen to this brief exchange on MSLSD today on the Morning Joe. First the question and then the answer. Let's rack it up. Let's listen loudly. Put up the volume. Cut 12. Go.
Do you think that African Americans deserve to have a justice that on the court that represents the majority of their feelings? On affirmative act, let's just start with
right there. Stop right there. Do you think that African Americans deserve to have a justice on the court that represents a majority of their feelings? Start with affirmative action. The court is not a representative body. The court is not, let's go to the census and see what percentage of the people are women and men and gay and black and white and Asian and yellow and red and green. It's not how this is supposed to work. Why would somebody ask a question like that? And then demean somebody. Let's start with affirmative action. Do you think that African Americans deserve to have a justice on the court who represents a majority of their feelings? And, of course, a backhanded slap at Clarence Thomas? Oh, what is said on TV and then what is said on radio. Jekyll and Hyde. Now, how did Tavis Smiley of PBS respond to this question? Go.
Of action.
I don't know if I would use the word deserve. I think it is, in fact, a president's prerogative to choose who he thinks is best for the court at that particular time. And I think that every president ought to consider how the court ought to be balanced. There is an African American on the court. And if identity politics are going to play here, there is not a Hispanic on the court. And I don't think you ought to, you pick and choose based upon ethnicity. But I think it is true, though, that we live now, Joe, in the most multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic America ever, and that everybody in this great country deserves to see himself or herself represented in their court system.
Now, this is a very, pretty much thoughtful response, far more thoughtful than the question. First of all, he says, I wouldn't use the word deserve. In other words, no ethnic group deserves representation on the Supreme Court. It's not a representative body. If they represent anything, it's the rule of law and the Constitution and fidelity to both. He says, you ought to consider how the court's going to be balanced. If you're going to play identity politics, they're going to play here. There's not a Hispanic on the court. He's right. If you're going to play politics with the court, I guess you can do that. One constituency group or another. But he shouldn't. Why is it assumed that a justice is going to rule against one group or for another group or one way or another, merely by applying what's in the Constitution, or at least attempting to divine what's in the Constitution. What's the alternative? The alternative is a judicial oligarchy, legal anarchy, where it's left to man to decide what he wants to do at any given time. That's not law. It's the opposite of law. We call it lawlessness.